welcome to a special episode of To The Point. My guest today is the new HRD Minister, and this is Mr. Javdekar's first formal proper interview after A, his promotion to the cabinet, and B, taking charge of the powerful Human Resource Development Ministry. Mr. Javdekar, you've become HRD Minister at a time when many people felt that your predecessor had ruffled feathers and perhaps rubbed people up the wrong way. And there's a whole list of people that she seems to have rubbed up the wrong way. People in your own ministry, the PMO, by some accounts even cabinet colleagues, and a lot of academics. So was your first task to put a healing touch and to smoothen ruffled feathers?
First, let me tell you that Smriti did very good and took many good initiatives in HRD. Continue with those initiatives. One. And second, as a press, you will ask this kind of question, but let me tell you that the approach of the government is seen in the resolve of the Prime Minister. And last week only we had Interstate Council meeting where there are always 4 topics to be discussed in Interstate Council, where all Chief Ministers come. One topic was quality of, and their Prime Minister said that we have achieved expansion. We have practically taken education to all, but we need more now stress on quality. I think that's the job now as a HRD Minister, as she was also carrying, we will carry it further.
I want to talk about some of the important things you've said in the 15 days you've been HRD Minister, because I think they've struck people's attention in a big way. First of all, on the 12th you said, and I'm quoting you, all we want is good education. This is not a BJP Congress matter, this is a national issue. Are you in a sense telling the country that education needs to be depoliticized? It shouldn't be a political football, it shouldn't be a matter of tu-tu-me-me between political parties, it should be a matter on which there's a national consensus.
Actually, I said it even in Parliament yesterday when we discussed the National Institute NIT bill. When we did that, there was a very good discussion, and therefore I'm convinced that education which touches every family and which is aspiration of the poor and every citizen, there we need a consensus building more, and therefore it's a national agenda.
And therefore it shouldn't become a political football.
I always believe in that.
And therefore you are deliberately depoliticizing the subject.
Yes, absolutely. Now, but not deliberately. This is my firm conviction.
This is your personal conviction?
Firm conviction.
So this is in fact Prakash Javdekar's personal attitude to education.
Yeah, because I have worked in education field for the last 40 years, and our Prime Minister also thinks, because future of country depends upon the best of education we deliver to the generation.
And the answer is to depoliticize it, to take it out of the tu-tu-me-me of party politics.
Absolutely, and therefore in my another interaction, I said that today Bharatiya Shikshan Mandal has called me in their serious seminar on national education policy. Even Congress Forum or Communist Forum calls me for such a serious discussion. I'll definitely go there.
In fact, on the 12th you said a second thing that was very important. You said, and again I'm going to quote you, we need views from all ideologies. We need each and every suggestion. Does this therefore mean that under you the HRD ministry will not discriminate against left-wing intellectuals and in particular historians? And I ask this because many historians in the last year and a half felt they were being picked upon and targeted. Are you giving them a message? No discrimination.
Modi ji and our government, we have never targeted anybody. That is not our politics. But yes, there will be natural changes when the term ends. There will be new VCs, there will be people coming around, but there is no targeted things, or there is no selective approach.
But will you try and fill posts with people who are right-wing and close to the BJP and exclude the left? Because that was an impression given earlier.
It is the national issue, it's a national topic, and therefore it's a national consideration. That is the matter.
And therefore the left will have its fair share of representation.
I don't see into left or right. I see in as a national subject.
So there's no exclusion therefore?
We don't believe in exclusion.
Now, a few days earlier than the 12th, I think this was virtually the morning after you took over as HRD Minister. You spoke about the need for innovation in education, and then you added the following sentence. Innovation is a process of rebellion, essentially. Unless you rebel, unless you challenge the status quo, how can you innovate? Did you really mean to say what you said?
No, I have said this umpteen times, but as I was not that time HRD Minister, nobody took note of it. But my firm belief is, see how innovation happens, three ways. First is, there is already innovation happened, you improve upon it. That's one way. Second is, there is one technology or something, ideation has come and you convert into a technology. That's taking the idea further. But for a new idea, I was with Steve Jobs for 2 days in '98 when I was heading IT task force of Government of Maharashtra. And he was telling us about iPhone, which was not existing that time. And he was telling us that in one hand there are how many features he wants to build in, which seemed to be a daydreaming. But that's how innovation happens. And therefore rebellion, you have to question, because we don't allow students to be inquisitive. And we say, shut up. That should go. And I'm telling this umpteen times.
But you know, it's very important the words you use. You talked about rebellion, you talked about challenging the status quo. That's more than just students being inquisitive. When you rebel, when you challenge the status quo, you're asking students to raise deep, sometimes disturbing questions.
But for innovation.
Absolutely. But
that innovation.
But remember, those questions will first throw a challenge at firm beliefs. They'll throw a challenge at people's principles. You're saying, good, challenge.
See, I believe in dialogue. I believe in debate. I want people to discuss freely, and we are ready. My philosophy is, I will convince you, or I will get convinced.
But you know, I don't ever believe I've heard a senior Indian politician call upon young students to rebel and challenge the status quo.
It is not about political thing. Politics is free. Everybody can have his opinion and they can form many parties, and there are so many parties. When I go in foreign countries and when I see, when we seize coal by $6 per ton, so Ban Ki-moon also asked me, oh, how it was possible? I said, we have 36 parties in parliament. But they said, here are only 2 parties, but it is not possible. But you could achieve it.
But yes, you're actually saying as HRD Minister that you want students to challenge the status quo. You
not
want them
students
to
only. Everybody.
To challenge the status quo.
Because everybody, those who want to innovate have to think differently. And those who want to come out with something good for the society, they will have to think differently and think out of the box. Then, that is what I am saying.
Then let's come to something you mentioned as part of your answer to my first question, the stress on quality. You
yes.
said that in fact both you and the PM were committed to improving quality of education. I want to ask you first about government schools. How are you going to improve the quality of government schools? Because to begin with, some of them don't have teachers, some of them don't have facilities, many don't have both. And worse still, increasingly even poor parents are now prepared to pay from their pockets to make sure their children get a private education. In these circumstances, how will you improve government schools?
I think you have asked a very right question. That's my first priority. How to improve school education, particularly in government school. I am the product of Jilla Parishad school. I was in a Tehsil town in Konkan region, and I learned from 1st to 9, 1st to 4th in Jilla Parishad school, then in a privately run, but a very sensible school.
So you know how deep is the need
yes.
to improve.
And
how will you do it?
My own mother, 92-year-old, she is here, and she was primary teacher in Jilla Parishad system.
But how will you tackle this problem?
Yes, we will tackle it.
But how?
By taking all the stakeholders together. And I have made it a history in Paldev village, which I adopted, which is in Bundelkhand, near Chitrakoot, on the border of Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh. Just 2 sentences. What I did was took teachers into confidence, made community participate in the whole educational renovation, and we trained and started took special efforts, motivated students also, motivated teachers essentially, and with that small step and more training for the teachers, they changed the system. It was 28% result in 12th. It became 82% with 7 months effort, and even this year it has continued because now it is 78%.
You see, Minister, this may work in the case of one school or one small area, but can it work nationwide?
Yes.
You believe so?
That is what our job is,
So-
and we will deliver.
So you mean to say that getting parents and getting teachers and getting stakeholders, as you call them, together and united can change the system?
Yes, and there are many aspects.
But will you have
See,
adequate backup in terms of financial resources from Mr. Jaitley? That's another key question.
no, that will definitely happen because our government gives top priority to education because that is enabler. That is the changing.
So the
whole
resources are
scenario.
guaranteed. What's needed is involving stakeholders and giving everyone involved a commitment.
And two, yeah, and I believe there are so many good teachers and so many passionate teachers, and if there are some bad things in the whole system, we can definitely tackle it with the help of technology, by help of motivation, by help of more innovative trainings, and making education entertaining.
There's no doubt that you have enormous belief in yourself. You are convinced that you can make a difference.
Yes,
Do you really believe in 3 years you can deliver a major change in government schools?
we are not here for only 3 years.
But 3
This
years is
first term will be for 3
but
years.
that's the first
But yes,
test.
we
That's
will
the first
make.
test.
Under Modi's leadership, this government is going to change in many ways the systems, the way it was running, and even in
But by
education,
2019, education will be different in government schools?
definitely there will be a marked difference.
Okay, let's then come to universities. Many people believe that what is holding Indian universities back, and which is why we are ranked internationally below Chinese universities, is what they call the stranglehold of bureaucracy. And I want to put a simple thing to you. Can you allow top universities, top IITs, top IIMs to A, set their own curricula, to B, set their own standards for hiring faculty and taking into consideration students, C, to raise funds, and D, to raise or to levy reasonable fees? Can you give them that liberty and freedom?
See, I believe that at our higher education, the main challenge is again creating capacities and really imparting international standard quality education which will stand India in the good state. Our brilliant of the brilliant students go to America. I believe that one day they will not only come back but will make higher education system where many foreign students will be coming
I
here.
come to the point you're making about international universities and also to the point you're making about Indian students going abroad. But let me come back to my question. Are you prepared to loosen the hold of bureaucracy on universities so that in simple things like their curricula, like how they recruit students and faculty, they have more freedom to do it themselves?
As there is parliament session on, I cannot declare in press interview, but we will come out with many more schemes.
Okay. What about something else? Many people
Because
say,
I believe colleges become more autonomous, they get more freedom, to give more quality education.
so autonomy for colleges and universities will be enhanced under you.
Yeah, definitely, that's the program.
The problem is that at the moment you have a UGC, the University Grants Commission, people believe that you can only enhance autonomy if you loosen the hold of the UGC. But is it politically feasible to loosen the hold of the UGC, or is that just too much of a challenge for you?
I am just in the phase of taking reviews, but when I take reviews, I take 2 to 3 hours for each institute, and then we discuss in what direction we want to go. And in education, let me tell you, we will go to cabinet on many issues because this belongs to everybody. We have interministerial consultations, and every of my senior colleagues.
That I understand.
Yeah,
but
so we'll
when
do
you
it.
do your reviews 2 to 3 hours at a time, is the UGC and its functioning and its powers also being reviewed?
That will be reviewed next week.
It will be reviewed next week.
Yeah.
So this is a key priority focus for you.
No, UGC, AICTE are the higher education main bodies which are regulators, and at the same time we have many other experiments going on in our country. We will review all these things too. Review means not for changing but to understand first, and then we will take it the natural course.
And that could include changes. You're not excluding changes.
No, the change is a constant thing.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned also the fact that you want international standard universities. There's no doubt that the Prime Minister is very keen that the major Western universities should be allowed to set up campuses in India. Unfortunately, your predecessor made this a bone of contention.
No.
Will you take a more
You don't
accommodating,
see,
a more...
let me tell you, Smriti ji, let me once
I'm
again
not
tell
criticizing her. I'm asking if your
Because-
attitude
no.
will be different.
I am telling you, Even I was member of HRD committee when Kapil Sibal was, and he brought in foreign collaboration regular.
But the bill got
regulation.
stuck in Parliament.
No, because, but let me tell you, as a Oscar Fernandez was chairman, we all worked together in standing committee, and we gave a unanimous report on various suggestions. So there are, I know what was the issues, and we will
Let me
definitely.
ask a simple question. I know that because Parliament is in session, you can't make a policy announcement. And I also know you don't want to criticize your predecessor, and that's understandable. But let me ask you a simple question. Is Prakash Javadekar, the new HRD minister, in favor of permitting major Western universities to set up campuses in India?
There is a foreign education partnership program already in 2012. There were orders, and it is working under it. We'll definitely see how is the progress and what needs to be done.
The newspaper says that the Prime Minister's office is very keen that foreign universities should have the maximum autonomy to function in India. Are you in agreement with that?
No, don't believe every time the newspaper reports.
So in other words, it's not true.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying that every time newspaper report is, it should
But
not
on
be
the
based.
newspaper-
I can tell you that yes, there will be more interaction. How in our system it fits. There is already 2012 decisions, and now 3 years on, we will definitely see where it has progressed.
Let me ask you a simple question. In 2019, when Mr. Modi and you face the country again, will there be 1 or 2 foreign universities with a campus in India?
No, it is not just foreign university campus. I can tell you that higher education level, there are tremendous things coming up which will make education available anytime, anywhere, on one side with the help of technology, and on the other way, there will be a very enhancement of quality at all levels of higher education.
So once again, there will be a fairly dramatic change in higher university, higher education levels and standards in India.
Definitely.
You're absolutely confident?
Yes.
Politicians often make big boasts. This is not a boast, is it?
It is not boast.
Okay. You mentioned also a moment ago about the importance of bringing back to India some of the best students that tend to go abroad to study. We have 4 or 5 examples of some of the best economic brains who've gone abroad to study. There's Raghu Ram Rajan, there's Arvind Subramaniam, there's Arvind Panagriya, there's Kaushik Basu, but there must be thousands more in different fields.
Yes.
Will you make a real effort to bring them back? And I'll tell you why I ask. Because many people believe the regeneration of Chinese universities began with China attracting back its intellectuals. Can you do the same?
I know very well that China's initiatives have paid off, and I believe that anybody's initiative. Already with Modi as a Prime Minister, people, or the Indian diaspora, and particularly young people, are already thinking of coming back to India.
Well, they think maybe, but whether they actually do depends upon what terms you set. What terms can you set to encourage them?
We will have very good architecture for all such people, and let me tell you one
I know
thing.
you can't reveal details because Parliament is in session, but this is again something you're working on. It's a priority for you?
Definitely, for 2 reasons. A, we have to create Center of Excellence by inviting, and we have already started GAN program, as it is public, that foreign faculties also.
But come back to the Center of Excellence.
No, so that is what I am saying. How Center of Excellence becomes a reality? When you have that kind of,
Will you bring people from abroad to India?
Both things, both ways. Our own people and even foreign faculty.
So you will actually not just permit, but you will create an environment where foreign professors would prefer or choose to come and work in India for 5 years.
Already they have started, and that's a good GAN program.
And you will take this further?
Yeah. And more importantly, I was chairman of working group on IT for Masters in 2000. We negotiated with MIT, Massachusetts Institute, a project called Media Lab Asia. And then it was started. We were to invest 1,000 crore rupees. So Atalji, after coming back, asked me what we are importing. I said we are importing the research culture, the research environment, the research freedom, which many times
I'm very happy to hear you make that particular point, because one of the things that academics had noticed in the last year or so, that actually it was becoming increasingly more difficult for professors to come and research, for professors to come for seminars. Just the visa was becoming more difficult to get, and that was putting off foreign faculty, foreign academics.
But actually under the GAN already there are many people and programs are approved.
I'm asking you a simple question. Will you make it easier for foreigners to come and research, to come and teach, to come and study?
It
Just
depends
as you
upon,
want,
no, see, the visa is a different regime. It doesn't.
but you can
given by-
speak to the ministry.
No, no, but if it is, there are some reasons, it is different reasons, but not for academics. See, we believe
In other words-
more concrete interaction. See, one
So
good
you will
initiative-
encourage academics to come.
See, one good initiative which we will now launch very soon is the digital library network. I was just taking review of it. See, 15 lakh books of 52 eminent libraries throughout the country.
Okay.
It will be available to you.
These are wonderful things you're saying. Let me end this section by putting a simple point to you. If you're really genuine, and I personally believe, judging your conviction, judging your passion, that you are genuine, but if you're really genuine about A, depoliticizing education, B, bringing in people of all ideologies together, and C, creating a national consensus, then let me make a suggestion. Why don't you organize a 2 or 3 day conference of academics, scholars, scientists, social scientists, and a whole range of people, so that they can come and share with you their thinking about renewing education and reviving Indian education, and give you a chance to listen and learn.
It's a good suggestion, and there are many occasions where such kind of conferences happen, and I'll definitely participate. I want to listen to everybody, and I offered yesterday in Parliament one thing, that we have already kept the input for the new education policy on the website, but for convenience I will be delivering on Monday the hard copy of that inputs, and I want MPs also to respond, and both houses have said that they want to discuss new education policy,
and you're happy for that.
And I am
so
said we are okay with that.
I get the impression from everything you've said that Prakash Javadekar believes major reforms, sweeping reforms are necessary in Indian education, and many will hear that and welcome it. The only thing I want to ask you is my impression correct, or have I jumped to the wrong conclusion?
No, let me tell you. The four corners of any education policy for a country like India are accessibility, that is reaching out to all.
Number two,
quality.
Number three,
third is affordability, and fourth is accountability in the whole system.
And that means that you will tackle all four with equal priority.
Yes.
And accountability will not be forgotten.
No.
Because often in India accountability is forgotten.
No.
Okay. And innovation will be a stress?
Because unless quality is all about research, innovative. And so we took one decision which we announced, was that when we are giving help to the, there is one initiative of providing bigger finance for higher excellence, centers of excellence. So there I am stressing that more importance should be given to create research infrastructure.
Research will be a priority within the overall emphasis on education and quality. Mr. Javadekar, let's take a break at that point. When I come back, I want to switch from HRD and education and talk to you about two topical issues that are at the very top of the political agenda today and facing the country. We'll be back in a moment's time. Stick with us. In part 2, we're going to talk to Mr. Javadekar about Kashmir as well as about the BJP relationship with Dalits in UP. Welcome back to a special episode of To The Point, an exclusive interview with the new HRD Minister Prakash Javadekar, and this is Mr. Javdekar's first proper formal interview after assuming charge as HRD Minister and his promotion to cabinet rank. Mr. Javadekar, I'm sitting in front of one of the most important ministers, holding one of the most in the government of India. A couple of topical political issues that are clearly in the news. And first I want to talk to you about the unrest that has virtually paralyzed the Kashmir Valley for 2 weeks. It happened before in 2008, it happened in 2010, and to be honest, we've had unrest in Kashmir periodically since the trouble began in the 1990s. And that leads to the question, are we mishandling Kashmir? Are we guilty of treating Kashmir as a law and order issue and ignoring and therefore not responding to the alienation of the people?
No, see, there is a role of our neighbor in many things which happens along the border and in the country. We know how terrorism or how these tendencies, this stone pelting is happening for years together now. This has become...
But is it entirely because of Pakistan, or are there internal causes that we're ignoring?
No, let me tell you, this time the state government and central government were more than active, and therefore, if you recollect the Amarnath crisis which happened that time and many other past incidences, this time the situation is under control. For a more precaution, there is longer duration of curfew.
I accept your point. I accept your point that there is a Pakistani hand.
Yeah, but no, 1 minute. We are holding NEET examination in Srinagar.
Let me come back to my question, because it's a question many people are today asking. Are we looking at Kashmir purely in law and order terms and therefore ignoring and failing to respond to the alienation, the emotions, the political feelings of the people?
No, I don't think, because Home Minister Rajnath Singh has made it so abundantly clear, and the state government under Mehbooba Mufti and PDP and BJP together, I think we are taking the right steps so that you will see less and less of disturbances in future and things will improve for better.
In an interview that he gave me on Wednesday, former Home Minister P. Chidambaram said that the very heart of the problem was the fact, and I'm quoting him, "We have ignored the grand bargain under which Kashmir acceded to India." He said, "We have broken faith, we have broken our promises." In other words, India went back on the terms on which Kashmir acceded to India.
What can I say? Chidambaram is repenting in leisure, but he should have been, he was the Home Minister. What he was doing that time? And this is absolutely false. This is not even what I should say. It is not पश्चाताप भी नहीं है, ये तो बिल्कुल विनाशकाली विपरीत बुद्धि उनके लिए है एक तरह से, क्योंकि they have lost and they could not digest their defeat, so they are even can say this thing. This was really atrocious analysis.
This analysis you're saying is atrocious.
Yes.
Because he actually went one step further. He said a more immediate cause of the present problem is the BJP, PDP government. He accepts. He doesn't deny that it's perfectly legitimate in political terms. But because the coalition between BJP and PDP gives the BJP a critical role in the valley, he says this is a grave provocation for Kashmiri Muslims, and B, he says, it's created a sense of fear among people of the valley.
Absolutely wrong. I don't agree with him. And let me tell you, this is just his frustration, desperation. That's what is on display.
You really mean strong words like that? Frustration and desperation?
Absolutely. Because he, as a Home Minister, has defended AFSPA, and now he is speaking against it.
So he's being
absolutely unacceptable.
You mean he's being hypocritical?
Absolutely.
You're saying that the credibility of what he says today is undermined by the fact that when he was in power and could have acted, he didn't act.
No, not only that, but he actually, he said many things which he is now countering himself.
So he's not just being hypocritical, he's contradicting himself as well.
Yes.
So he has no credibility in your eyes. That's what
absolutely
you're saying.
not.
Now, the most...
He's an intelligent person, but you have to be not only politically correct, you have to be really truthful to your own things. And he's not, at least for this
he's not
analysis.
Being truthful to himself.
Yeah, for this analysis.
The most radical part of the interview that Mr. Chidambaram gave me was his solution to the problem of Kashmir. He said, and I'm quoting him once again, what is necessary is to give the assurance that the grand bargain under which Kashmir acceded to India will be fully honored. In other words, we have to go back, roll the clock back to the terms of accession of 1947 as far as is possible. In some areas it won't be, but as far as it's possible, we have to roll back to the relationship as it was in 47 when Kashmir
See, in a democratic country, everybody may have his opinion, but we don't agree to Chidambaram's opinion.
At all?
Absolutely not.
He made one more point. He says that this is going to be a cause or a mission for him. He's going to debate it across the country because he wants to change public opinion. Is the BJP prepared to enter into a debate on this subject with him?
Where is the issue? Issue is he wants to go and campaign for something in which he believes. Democracy allows that.
But will you debate him?
No, nobody has invited us.
But if he were to?
I don't answer hypothetical questions. But our parliament our government is always said that we are, and Kashmir was debated. The Kashmir situation there in both houses, nobody held view what Chidambaram gave to you.
Let's then come to a second issue that is also very topical and important at the moment. It's the insulting comments made by your former Vice President of the BJP in Uttar Pradesh.
That topic is already over.
Absolutely. No, I'm asking you a different question. I'm not talking about his comments. Not only did you sack him, but you also expelled him from the party promptly. So the question is, there was one further critical step you didn't take, which was to file an FIR against him under the SC/ST Act. Why did you stop short of that?
No, there is a law, is a state subject, and state has to take, and I think there is an FIR.
Well, filed by the state government.
But it has to file by the state government.
It wasn't filed by any BJP person, and Mayawati says publicly it would have been very nice if the BJP had filed the FIR.
See, law enforcement machinery is the state police, and they have to take cognizance. It's not the private FIRs which matter, it is the state FIRs
but a private
which
individual from the BJP could have filed an FIR if you wanted to. Nothing stopped you.
Gimmicks won't work. The real action has to come from the state enforcement authorities.
I understand gimmicks won't work, and it's very interesting you should have used the word gimmick to describe a BJP person filing an FIR, and I'll tell you why. There's no doubt that your party is making a concerted attempt, and you've been doing so for 2 years, to reach out to Dalit voters. In fact, the Prime Minister just inducted 5 Dalit faces into his cabinet, and with UP elections less than a year away and 21% of UP being Dalit, I asked the simple question. The FIR, if you had filed it, or your party chief in UP had filed it, would have added credibility to the BJP in Dalit. By not filing it, you've left question marks in Dalit minds about the BJP's intentions.
No, because we have one maximum number of scheduled caste seats. We have the largest number of scheduled caste MPs and MLAs. We have largest number of scheduled caste following in our 11 crore membership. There is a sizable scheduled caste thing, and more importantly, we believe that, and our Prime Minister says 125 crore people. We think everybody is equal. And not only that,
Javdekar, you have cited facts that go up to 2014, 2015. The problem is that the perception of the BJP's relationship with Dalits seems to have changed in the last 6 months or 8 months. Let me cite 3-4 facts to you. The Daya Shankar episode happened in the wake of Dalits in Gujarat being attacked by Gaurakshak organizations who many believe are ideologically close to your party. That happened in the wake of Ambedkar House being demolished in Mumbai. That happened after Rohit Vemula. And one last thing. And that happened after the long delay that your government took converting the SC/ST atrocities ordinance into a proper bill. There was a long gap. And people ask a simple question. They say, is there an anti-Dalit streak in the BJP or its ideological fraternity?
Actually, because Modi ji is taking all sections of society together, he believes that progress is the only answer for all ills which India is facing today, and more importantly, Shoshit Pidit Dalit, everybody who is deprived must get justice. That is what he started. Not only in economics, but even in climate justice, he talked about poor.
I understand that, 1 minute. But the point is, are Dalits somehow excluded? Because that's the feeling many people have.
Actually, Dalits are coming to BJP in large numbers. That's why there are some thekedars who think that they are losing their grip, and therefore these are 3 separate incidences which has tell me one incidence in Congress regime Haryana. The whole things happened against, now the Dalit girl was raped in Kerala, the Congress doesn't talk about it. And when Gujarat government has taken so much action, and Maharashtra government has already said that we will build a beautiful thing.
The Gujarat government, many people feel, was late in taking action, and unfortunately,
it was not late.
There's a May video that has come to light after 2 months only because Unna happened, and that suggests that the May incident, which has now come to light, was ignored initially.
No. Because there has to be some information, and then because if there is an FIR, nobody has. See, Gujarat government has done wonderful in taking prompt action, and now we are even instituting. We have requested High Court to have special court.
9 days went by before the Chief Minister in Gujarat visited the homes of those who were affected. It's been said in all the papers. She hasn't denied it.
See, she has already taken action. That is important.
But late.
Again,
But late.
let me tell you, on Dalit issue or on any other issue, BJP is doing so much proactive and positive things. So
But are you really? Just a moment.
those who think that this is our bastion, they are now perturbed and they are disturbed.
Mr.
That's the
Javadekar,
only story.
you say with great pride that the BJP is doing so much on Dalit issues, but this afternoon, Daya Shankar's family has filed an FIR against Mayawati, and many people are now asking, has this happened with the blessings of the BJP? Has this happened under instructions from Amit Shah?
He is not part of the BJP.
Daya Shankar may not be part of the BJP today, but he was part of the BJP until 2 days ago,
So what?
and his family has done this. Is this
If
being
somebody
done?
has done
is this
wrong,
being done deliberately?
see, when party has taken immediate action, still those who want to make agenda against BJP, they will say so. But let me tell you that people believe in us. Even today in Gorakhpur, the way Prime Minister was in UP and has said so many things.
Come back to Daya Shankar
The
family.
people are.
Do you really
No,
believe
people are.
that
You should talk not today of Daya Shankar family, but you should talk of Prime Minister's speech in Gorakhpur.
you're a brilliant
which has
politician?
changed-
You're a
which has
brilliant
changed.
politician and a master at changing the subject. And I
brilliant-
give you great credit for
See,
that. But come back to Daya Shankar
brilliance-
because we're running out of time. Do you
Brilliance is
really,
not monopoly of praise.
Mr.
Hello.
Javadekar, do you really believe that Daya Shankar's family would have filed an FIR
See, I
against
don't-
Mayawati
I don't
without
speak-
some support or
One minute.
indication from the BJP?
I don't speak on the issue which, or the fact which I have not seen or I don't know. I have heard Prime Minister passionately speaking about all issues and the development of Uttar Pradesh and the response of the people. That is what is actually happening in UP. UP mindset is on that, and therefore those who are going to be defeated are disturbed and they want to defend
My
BJP.
last question to you, has this problem with the Dalits that's come to the fore damaged the chances of the BJP winning UP?
No, absolutely is not, because people believe what BJP is.
So you're on
BJP stands.
You're on target to win UP in next year's elections?
Absolutely.
And you really think you can get a majority on your own?
Yes.
This hasn't damaged your chances at all?
No, because people believe what Prime Minister stands for, what BJP stands for, how Congress and all other parties have actually duped them
My
in years.
last question to you. Right through this interview, you cited the Prime Minister. I haven't counted, but you must have cited him about 20, 30 times. He is really the face of the BJP and the biggest election winning card you have.
It is not about election. Sir, I can tell you some cabinet meetings or some party meetings, I always feel that they should be telecast live. The passion with which he speaks, the new ideas he gives, the program he carves out, and the urge in him to develop the nation
Is this
so
becoming a one-man government?
No, it is led by a very able leader, assisted by Team India and a very capable team, and therefore it is succeeding and making a difference to the country.
Mr. Javadekar, a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.